Hi, and welcome to Sugar Melts. In this week's episode, we're going to be finishing up, or hopefully finishing up, the journal that we started. So you may remember we did the outside cover, then the inside cover. We've secured a closure already on the outside with this really fun boho type ribbon. So today we're going to work on the inside. And what we'll try to get done, we'll put a couple pockets on the inside. One will be to cover up where we put the closure. I'll do that part first. That's really easy. And then we'll put in the signatures. The signatures are the paper that you put into a book. If you look in old-fashioned books where they had the binding, that's the kind of signature we're going to add today. So first, I'm going to talk about the pocket. What I've always seen done, and it has worked fine for me, when you put a pocket in here and you've got this some element under here you're trying to cover up, you don't want any paper or whatever you put in your pocket to snag on that. So all you have to do to just kind of keep that covered over time, it will never be seen, is just take a little piece of masking tape and slip that over the top there. And that keeps it smooth. It's not visible. No one will ever know that's under there. So that's going to work great. And then I took some complimentary pieces of paper. And all I did was I measured them down to, because I wanted to put 2 on this side and 2 on the back cover. And measured them to what would fit in here where I'm going to glue them. And trim them down. And then what you do when you want to, so this is what it's going to look like here. So we've got these 2 basically half pockets here that will sit like that. So you can put something in there or even back here, whether it's just mementos or reminders, whatever, you can put that in there. And this way with the slash, you've got the 2 pockets and you can keep making it deeper if you need to, a deeper slit. The best way I have found to do this, so we don't have to measure too much. So I've got my paper here. These are the scraps that were left over from that. And so let's do a measurement here. So 6 inches. So since our journal is about 7.5 by 5, I can leave it at 6 or go in a little bit. All I have to do then is turn it to cut down to that 5.5. We'll go in maybe to, I think I did 4.25 there. Okay, so now you've got your 4. And what you want to do so that you get the angles cut the same without measuring, you just basically put them back to back in here. Back to back, 2 in the front, 2 in the back. And then slide this into your cutter for the angle that you want. And I'll go ahead and I'll make this one a little steeper. So the 4 together, they're going to be exactly the same. Cut. Perfect. So here's the one pattern, and that will go like that one. And then here's the other side. So that's all you have to do to make those pockets. If you only want one pocket, you just have to use the one piece of paper. But it is pretty, I think, to use just a couple different patterns in there, give it a little unique interest. Get my scrap papers out of the way here. Okay, we'll move the cutting board, and then we can go to putting in these, or you can wait till the end. It may be best to wait just because once we get the paper in, the signatures, we won't rub against these too much. So let's do a signature and get started on those, and then we'll put our pockets in. But you can see how easy it is to cut those and then just secure them. Okay, so for adding the signatures, there's a couple things we're going to do. I took some paper, just plain old cheap computer paper, and I tea-dyed it, and all that means is I took tea and I put the paper in it, and then what it does is it gives it a little bit of texture, a little bit of color. You can tea dye things and make them really splotchy, or like mine, a little less splotchy. And then I sponge the edges, and because they come out sometimes, depending on where you dry and what your space is, I have a drying rack that I use for, you know, things that don't go in the dryer for clothes, a clothing dryer rack, and I hang my paper over that and it dries. It holds a lot, it's easy, but then what happens, oops, sorry about that. I don't know why my camera just shook like that. Sorry for that jolt, that was weird. When I take the paper off, I do actually iron it. Now, not everybody does if they have a process that works for them. If you want to iron paper, that's fine. I take the thinnest, oldest dish towel that I have, and I'll put the paper on my ironing board, put that dish towel over the top to protect the paper, because you don't want the paper to burn. And that just gives it enough steam, enough heat to flatten it all out. Okay, so we have, let's see how many pieces of paper we have. 2, 3, I think I usually do 5 per signature. So let's see if that works out. 2, 3, 4, 5. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Perfect. Okay. So just kind of look through your paper, see if there's any specific order that you want them in. You may not care, you may want it completely arbitrary, you may want something in the front or in the back. It's all good. Just get your papers into that order, and then get them as close as you can to lined up. Just get them all together there nice and snug, because when you're binding it, you don't want them to shift around too much. Okay, and then you may remember the other video I said these binder clips come in handy. This is when you're going to use those. So at this point, you have 4 corners. I don't know that it matters too much whether you put them on the outside or the inside. I just make sure that it's pretty stiff, pretty tight here. Let's see here. Get that a little smooth. Okay. Snug, not going to move around. And these do loosen up a little bit over time, not a lot, but they get a little better. Okay, so here we have our paper. And what you're going to need at this point, I always use a scrap piece of paper. And this is so that the holes that I put in the middle of my signature, this is a signature, I want them to also match on my other 2 signatures and in the middle of the journal, okay? Because this journal paper here, this is going to lay in, this is going to be going in here. And as you can see, the journal, as with most book covers, the journal cover is slightly larger than the paper. So it's important that I use this, because otherwise I don't want to miss the location for the holes on here. Okay, so let me get, you can use a pencil, you can use marker. Just be careful, because when you put the holes in, you don't want any of the indicator to come through. So I've got here a ruler also that I can use. My ruler here without everything falling. Things are falling. Might be easier to see with my purple ruler. So when I measure the middle, so here we go. We've got this grid line here. So it is 10 inches exactly across. Is that right about exact? Just about. Does it come up at 10? Little shy of 10, just a little shy. Okay, but here's my middle. I can see where that crease is. Okay, so I'll just use that crease. And then I want to get a dot right in the middle. So I'm at 7 inches here. So I'm going to put a dot at 3.5. Now I'm going to use, have 3 holes on here for binding. So I'm just going to come down 1 inch and then I'll be at 6 inches, okay? So that's where the 3 dots are going to be that I'm going to make my holes at. And I want to make sure on this paper that it is the same also. Now usually, yeah, so you can't see through it as you can see, but you want to line that up pretty close, pretty close. So let's go ahead first and we'll put the holes in this signature and you'll see how this all starts to come together. So this is the other tool that I recommended getting. It's designed specifically for this. So I push through, doesn't need to be too far, but you want to make sure to go all the way through the paper because you're going to be threading that heavy wax thread through this so that it stays together. Okay, so I've got all 3 on there. Let's see, get all those on there. Perfect. Okay. So what I'm going to do here, let me just go ahead and I'm going to fold this piece of paper in half. I think that'll make this a little easier. There's different ways of doing it. And I change my way, I feel like, a lot. So I try to get it centered because I know this is the same height as the journal. Can you see that? It's exactly the same as the journal. So I'm going to imagine this is going into the center of the journal. There we go. And I'm just going to mark where those holes are. 1 there, 1 there, and then the 3rd hole there. Okay. And this is just my trace then that I can use for the other 2 signatures when we get ready to do those. Okay. So I want to keep this ribbon out of the way. Okay, and then I'm going to go in here and actually, now you can use a Sharpie marker with this or something that's a little more visible on your paper because you're not going to see this through the signatures. So I'm going to come up here and let's kind of eyeball where the center of this is. So I've got 3 of them going in. So I want this to be right in the middle. So I'm going to do 1 there, 1 there, and 1 there. Then I can also come back just a little bit because I'm going to put those other 2 signatures in here, right? So I can mark those holes while I'm here. 2, 3, and then I can flip it around because we kept all those in the middle. And let's do 1, 2, and 3. Perfect. Okay. So for the outside here, so now what we're going to do is sew in our first signature. And I want to pick the thread out. The thread will be visible on the outside spine. Okay, here we go. Got my needle out. These are also very large needles because our thread is thick. So this is a little, actually, yeah, these are different sizes. So I want to use the larger one today. And then let's pick a thread that matches this outside. I kind of like how this one shows up really well. Ooh, but that looks almost the same. If you were closer, you could see it's almost the same. It's that one. I have never used this one. Let me see if I can get the plastic off of it. Okay. Well, that's a little more brown than I want. This one, though, has some kind of red going on. Let's see if this will match. So I get it unwrapped. Oh, I kind of like this one. This is the one I'll use. Okay. Get some of this stuff out of the way. Okay, so got our needle. We've got our paper, our thread, and our journal cover. Okay. So to measure this, the way this is going to work is it's going to go through the middle, up to the top, through the top hole, down through the bottom hole, and then through the center again. So I'm going to need at least 3 lengths of this. 2, and then 3. Okay. And then I will cut this. Okay. Okay. So now I'm going to thread my needle. There we go. And we don't put a knot or anything, but this will eventually tie. We're going to put a knot there. So I leave a little bit of a tail here, enough that I can do that. Okay, it's going to be the tail. Put the needle carefully through. See how it comes all the way through there. Come up to where I have my tail. There's my, that will be the other tail that gets tied in. And then I'm going to, let me make my holes here. Sorry. You could use your needle through it, but I wouldn't recommend it. You've got your hole punching tool here. So let me just go ahead and I'm going to punch all 3 of these holes real quick. And then all the way through. So then what I might as well do while I'm here is I'm just going to do the other holes for the other 2 signatures. So they're all, I'll have 3 sets of 3 holes already done. You can see this is basically blotting out that marker so it won't be visible at all once your paper's in, especially. Okay. And then my other one here. Okay. That hole. This is such a great tool. Whether I've used file folders, cereal boxes, cardboard, it doesn't matter. This goes through it really well. So then I should be able to see 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I've got my holes there. Okay, here we go. So let's see where the front is. Get everybody, always double check these things. I start moving things around and okay. So it's going through in the back. Push that needle through. Your hole may not be as big as your needle, so it may take a little bit of muscle. Okay. Here we go. And that's gonna pull up. See how we got that? Leave your tail. Let me put a little more tail back on that. And then I'm gonna go through the middle one up here. There we go. Pull that all the way through. Oops. So you can see how this is going to line up here. Okay. Now after this, it's going to be pretty secured to the journal, so I won't be able to, I have to push it through all together from here on forward. Get that out of the way. Okay. Binder clips just keep snagging on the journal cover. They will do that. So we've now got our first stitch. You can see that's kind of taut. You'll be able to go back and make that tighter. So now this time, because they're all together, I'm sorry my head's in the way. I put the needle through the paper and I'm going to go right through that journal's hole. Make sure your thread isn't tangled. And you're going to have to push a little bit if your needle's larger than the hole, not a problem. The thread is waxed, so that helps a lot. It's just kind of slick, so it goes through nice and easy. Okay, so now we're almost done with our first signature. Normally I would have waited on the closure, but I wanted to show that the other video, and now it's, of course, in the way as I do all this stuff. So let's get this nice and snug, pull everything tight, and now we're going to make our last stitch on the signature. Really careful with this one. You may want to kind of pull it apart so you can see in there to make sure that you're not actually, for those of you that have sewed before, you know you can kind of go through your thread and sort of shred it. Okay, so I'm going to pull this through, and now I'm going to go into my signature. I just want to make sure I'm going through the same hole. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so then let's get all the thread through, and I always have extra thread. It's like my biggest, the thread's pretty inexpensive and you get a lot of it, so I just don't want to ever run out. Okay, so you can see how that's a little loose, so we're just going to start pulling to get that all nice and snug. There we go. Okay, so that's, you just keep kind of pulling until you get these tails. Okay, so it's nice and smooth here. Flip it over, make sure it's nice and smooth there. I like one tail on each side of the paper. And then I just do a simple double knot. You can certainly make them pretty with bows or butterflies, anything in there, knowing that it will, it's a writing surface. And especially with a color this dark, it's pretty deliberate that it's there, so I'm not going to try to hide it. It's there, and that's what it... Okay, so I've got the first one in. There we go. And basically, we're going to repeat that for the next two, okay? So I'll try to go a little faster, maybe not explain every single step as I go. And then, so we've got our 5 papers. I do my binder clips. And I don't worry too much if it's not exactly perfect. I like things that look a little more homemade, casual. So it's okay if it, for me at least, if it isn't perfect. Then I'm going to take off my tracer here, my little trace. Let's line this up. There's my fold. Okay. Get that right in the center. In fact, I could probably just use my ruler again for this one to make sure it's exactly where I want it. Get it lined up on that line, 7 inches. So you may remember I put a line at, there's my fold. So we're going to do one at 3.5, at 1, and at 6. Poke my holes. Go. Get my thread again here. 1, 2, 3. Thread the needle. And I always do the center first. I don't know why. Maybe I think it makes it easier for the long run if everything's going to be off of the center. But from here, if you want to do the front first or the back, I don't think I've ever noticed a difference. It does start to get crowded, so maybe I do the front one first and then the back one, just because you've got the other signature in there. It kind of gets a little, naturally a little bit crowded. Okay. So let's pull our paper in. Here's our tail. and then go in through the hole, pull that needle through. I think it's, yeah, it's snagged on one of these binder clips. Oh, just don't pull too hard. Never pull too hard. Just kind of get your slack that you need and it'll cooperate, just with a little bit of time and patience. Okay, and then we'll go up here to this top one. Want to be real careful. You don't want to poke through the other, sorry for my head in the way, my other signature. You don't want to go through that paper. So there we pull through. There's our second stitch. Okay, let's get all of our thread where we want it. And then I'm going to go through the top of this paper. Here we go. Okay. So starting to remember how you did this the last time. Okay, and then we go all the way down to the bottom to the third hole. Pull through. And then go under to that bottom hole through the journal cover. Pull that through. There's my tail. Get everything nice and snug. Nothing's in the way here. Okay. Looks good, looks good. So then we're going to come back through this hole, and again, as I mentioned, I don't like to go through the thread, so as much as I can, I like to have I don't like to do this stuff too blind, if that makes sense. I want to be able to see exactly where it's going in, and then you go back in the middle hole. Okay, oops. Let's do it like this. I think that'll be easier. There we go. Okay, oops. So the needle's back there. And so now what we can do is we're going to, again, get this nice and taut. Get everything lined up. So I don't pull too hard because it is paper after all. You don't want to tear the paper, especially at this juncture. You've come so far. And then I just kind of keep pulling any slack that I might find. So there's a little bit of slack. Get that a little snugger. Okay, so now inside, that's pretty nice. Nice and taut. Flip it back over. No gaps. One on each side, and I'm ready to tie the signature off. 1, 2, and then trim. I might trim that a little bit more. I don't want it sticking out at the bottom. Okay, 2 in, 1 to go. Almost done. And then we'll put our pockets in and we'll be good. Okay. So now you got a little bit of bulk in here. So just be aware of that. And of course, if you want to decorate this paper, I've used bullet paper, lined paper. I've stamped in them before. You can be as creative or as, simple as you want it to be. Okay, so get all of my papers together. Nice and tight. There we go. This is my newest binder clip. It is not really flexible at all. 2, and then 3, and then 4. Okay. Get our ruler out, our pencil. Put it right in there. So we're going to mark at 3.5, 1, and 6. Poke our holes. Okay. Go. And then we'll thread our needle. Find the end of the thread. I do like working with this wax thread. It's just very easy to use. 1, 2, 3, and then we'll trim right there. Thread the needle. Okay. There we go. Get myself a little tail. Go through the center. Get through all the papers. Here's my other tail on the back end. And then because we already have these holes poked, this will go fairly quickly here. Go through the middle. There's our front. Let's see how we're doing here. So we got a little bit of thread here so to pull through. Perfect. Find your needle and tail, and you're going to go through the top hole, which is right there. Okay. Careful not to poke yourself. When you've got this much kind of busyness going on, you don't want to start bleeding on your project. Oops, don't lose your tail. There we go. Keep my tail there. And then there we go. Comes right through the paper. Let's get all of that in. Okay. So there's that. That's nice and snug. So then we come down all the way down to the bottom, go through that third hole, and you can probably see underneath enough to just push it on through, right through your journal. There we go. Find the loose tail, pull that through. Okay. And our last stitch here is going to go back through that center. And then into that middle hole, not piercing any extra paper or thread. There we go. Let's go ahead and get it on the right side. There we go. Okay. So these holes can get a little, there, see, you got that extra thread there. I need to pull through that tail. See which, there it is. Okay, so I don't need the needle anymore. I'm going to move that out of the way so less injury. And then we're going to make sure all the papers, the thread is taut, nice and tight there. Look on the outside, make sure there's nothing sagging. Okay, 1 and 2. Measure to the edge of the paper. Scraps, binder clips are done. And then we can put in our pockets. So for the pockets, I have now these 2 sets. So I did one ahead of time and then decided to cut it for you. So as you can see, all 4 of these are the same size. So what I'm going to do is pick which ones I want in the front. And I'll put this one over. These two in the front, and then these two will be in the back. When you're putting pockets in, especially if they're for the purpose of covering something up, like this stitch here from the closure, we want to make sure we are not overlapping any creases. So that's why I make them a little bit smaller. You also want to make sure you don't put any glue on the opening. So I'm going to first glue this one down, this underside here. And I'm only going to put glue on a couple of the edges, not all of them. And I'm not going to use a heavy stream of glue, so I don't want it to get everywhere now that I've got my paper in there. So can you see I'm only doing it on the 3 sides. Just get down to the corners there. Okay. I think this is a really nice complementary color, almost too close, which was why I decided to go with something that contrasts it so you can see where the pocket is. And then I'm just going to glue this the same way right on top. Just make sure not to put any glue on the opening of the pocket. And not up too high, because you want to be able to put anything in there that is important. Okay, so then I'm going to line it up to the under the first pocket piece, because I know they're exactly the same. There we go. Those 2 pockets are now in place. We can do the pockets on the back exactly the same way. I do this one underside first. There are also, I do have dies that I use occasionally that have really pretty patterns for pockets, almost the waterfall effect. So there's different styles that are out there. And then let's make sure I'm avoiding that crease. Okay, it's a little off to the side. There we go. That's a little better. And then I'll put this one on top. Want this side to have some glue. There we go. So how easy was that? You can probably make a journal today with most of the things you already have around the house. I picked up a few other things along the way, the thread, the larger needles, the hole puncher for binding. But other than that, most things I already had. So here is our finished journal. There we go. So I hope you enjoyed this. I'll be making another journal soon. I've got another idea for one, and so I'll be showing that with you soon. Just trim this extra thread off. It's kind of loose, loosey-goosey here. There we go. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed today's journal, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye.